Hi, fourth graders, back with more of our book today. From my front porch, picked a different spot to sit today, but still super nice out. So we are on chapter 19. Parker Elias is telling this one. Grams has a lot of life experience, being super old and all that. For example, she tells me that when she was first dating my grandfather back in Israel, there was this other girl who was trying to steal him away while Grams was doing her military service in Haifa. So Grams challenged this girl to an arm wrestling match, and the prize was Grandpa. I peer over at her in the passenger seat of the pickup. What if you lost? I was loading supply trucks, kiddo. I was strong as an ox. As much as I love Grams, I'm not so sure I believe the story. The last time she explained how she got rid of the girl who moved in on Grandpa, she said she backed over her Vespa with a Jeep. Grams tells the same stories because she doesn't remember telling them last time and the time before that. Some people might find that annoying. To me, it just means that we've always got something new and interesting to talk about while I'm driving her around. I just wish she could remember my name. The reason the subject comes up, dating and boyfriends I mean, is that there's a rumor that Miss Fountain and Jake Terranova are going out. Our class thinks this because Jake has kind of adopted SCS 8. Jake, that's what he told us to call him. Even the employees at the dealership call him Mr. Terranova, but to us, he's Jake, except Ribbit. He always uses Mr. when he talks to Jake, which is almost never. Jake may be hitting it off with Miss Fountain, but he isn't getting very far with Mr. Kermit. Here's how it usually goes down. Jake shows up in room 117 to invite us to Terranova Motors so the mechanics can show us how windshield wipers work or how a battery supplies power to the starter. He has to come in person because Mr. Kermit's phone is so old that it would probably explode if it ever received a text. Meanwhile, Miss Fountain randomly walks in from room 115. Oh, what a surprise, Mr. Terranova's here. She calls him Mr. Terranova too. We're not fooled. He calls her Emma. From there, something always happens to connect our two classes. Maybe Vladimir starts squeaking because he hears Aldo's voice and won't shut up until Aldo goes over there, or the 7th graders are just about to have circle time and we get in on that. Jake loves circle time, and whenever it's his turn to compliment someone, he always picks Miss Fountain. Mateo is confused. I thought Jake chose us because he wants to make up for the cheating scandal, not because of Miss Fountain. That's just his excuse, Barnstorm puts in wisely. Do you think it's the car? I muse. Jake rolls this really snazzy Porsche convertible that's got to be a lot of fun to drive. Of course it's not the car, Kiana retorts angrily. Miss Fountain isn't that kind of person. She wants a relationship. I don't understand how Kiana can know something like that. But whatever the reason, life is definitely better since Jake started hanging around. Everybody loves him, even Aldo, and Aldo hates everybody. Jake's more like another kid than an adult, but a kid who has a dream life with tons of money and no adults telling him what to do. He talks to me about cars, to Barnstorm about sports, and to Mateo about Game of Thrones. He talks to Elaine. I guess car dealers don't worry about being headbutted downstairs or tossed into garbage dumpsters. He talks to Kiana about practically everything. He asks Raheem's opinion on the art for new ads for Terranova Motors, and Raheem never so much as yawns when he's around. The only person Jake can't schmooze is Mr. Kermit. Our teacher isn't quite mean to him. Most of the time, he just ignores Jake the way he used to ignore us. When Mr. Kermit's old car breaks down, he has it towed all the way across town, even though Jake offers to fix it for free. Ribbit would rather pay a lot of money than accept a favor from his old enemy. Whatever the reason, Jake has started hanging around. The trips to Terranova Motors are amazing. At first, the service staff aren't too thrilled to see Elaine because of what happened that time with the cookie. But then the compressor for the pneumatic system conks out, and Elaine's the only one who can loosen a stripped bolt using a hand wrench. All the mechanics stop what they're doing and applaud. Kid, that was awesome, the service chief exclaims admiringly. If the lift system loses power, can we count on you to pick up cars on your shoulders? It's the first time I've ever seen Elaine blush. I'll bet the kid she headbutted down the stairs wouldn't think it's so funny that an 8th grade girl is stronger than a shop full of adult mechanics. At first, the mechanics just talk a lot and show us stuff, but pretty soon we're doing real work. Jake guides my hand as I fit a new hose into the radiator of a Jeep Cherokee. As I set the ring to seal the connection, it just feels right. Somehow, I know that hose isn't going to leak. The boss reaches in and tests my handiwork. Perfect. Not so tight that the rubber might split. Nice job, Parker. It's weird. I open a book and the letters are all jumbled together into unbreakable code, but I look at a car engine and it all makes sense. Even if the tires still say Ready Goo, that's supposed to be Goodyear. Mr. Kermit is watching me and he's almost smiling. I think I can count on a puffy tail being added to my line of the chart today. Terranova Motors isn't the only place we're doing real work. It's happening in room 117, too. Mr. Kermit is teaching stuff. Math, science, English. We have our first test of the year, social studies, and Mr. Kermit even grades it. When we get to class the next day, our papers are face down on our desks. Aldo flips his over. D? Ribbit never gave tests before, and now he's throwing D's around? Barnstorm laughs in his face. It isn't Ribbit's fault you're stupid. He examines his own paper. The word incomplete is written across the top. What? He complains. At least I got a grade, Aldo tells him. I miss the old Ribbit, Barnstorm complains. Yeah, Aldo agrees. This is way too much like education. I get an incomplete too, mostly because I finished only 7 of the 20 questions, but I blink. 7 check marks parade down the page, which means whatever I did, I aced. I still got an incomplete, but not incomplete dumb, just incomplete slow. It stinks to fail, whatever the reason, but I disagree with Aldo and Barnstorm that our class was better before. We'll be in high school next year. Will they have an SCS 9 for us, followed by SCS 10, SCS 11, and SCS 12? And then what? Sooner or later, something has to change. Might as well start now. As I take my seat, I catch a glimpse of the test paper on Elaine's desk. I shake my head. I must be reading it wrong. That's what I do. On the other hand, how do you scramble a single letter? If I didn't know better, I'd swear Elaine, rhymes with pain, just pulled an A. Chapter 20. This one told by a new character, Jake Terranova. As I cruise along River Street with the top down, the red brick of Greenwich Middle School heaves into view. That place used to be a bad memory. I was never much of a student, but middle school was a really rough time. I was lucky to get away with a suspension over the cheating thing. If my dad hadn't belonged to the same college fraternity as a couple of school board members, I probably would have been expelled. It was that close. Now, though, Greenwich Middle School means Emma. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Just the thought that she's somewhere inside the building puts a smile on my face. The smile disappears when I recognize the figure standing at the entrance to the driveway, glancing impatiently at his watch. Mr. Kermit, my old teacher. The man who has every reason to drink from the haterade where I'm concerned. Back in 7th grade, I was so happy not to be expelled that there wasn't another thought in my head. It never crossed my mind that the episode might cause problems for my teacher. Why would it? Mr. Kermit was completely innocent. Who knew that better than the guy who was completely guilty? But that's only the half of it. According to Emma, Mr. Kermit's life crashed after that. His reputation was shot, his engagement to Emma's mom fell apart, and he got totally burned out professionally. Honestly, I had no clue until Emma showed me the article about the vuvuzelas. The fact that the scandal still sticks to Mr. Kermit after all these years is nuts. Not that I ever had the power to change anything. I was a middle school kid in big trouble. I followed my parents' instructions to the letter. Basically, shut up and keep your nose clean. Now that I know the extent of it, I'd do anything to make things right. The problem is, it's too late. Sure, Mr. Kermit is letting me help with his class of Unteachables, and I'm getting along great with the kids. But as for the teacher himself, no dice. I check the clock on my Porsche's high-tech dashboard. It's only 2 p.m. Why isn't Mr. Kermit in school? I pull alongside him and wave. Mr. Kermit scowls at me with what Mateo calls the Squidward Grinch face. That kid's pretty weird, but he's usually spot on. He's nicknamed me Han Solo because both of us are lovable scoundrels. Maybe I walked away from the cheating scandal with a slap on the wrist, but lately it's come back to haunt me in all sorts of ways. Everything okay, Mr. Kermit? I ask. My taxi is late. Right. His car is in the shop. I volunteered to fix it, no charge, but he wasn't having any of that. To say he's stubborn as a mule is an insult to mules. Hop in, I invite. I'll give you a ride wherever you need to go. No thanks, he replies formally. I've been waiting 40 minutes for this taxi. It'll be here any second. It's not coming, I persist. Did you try Uber? He looks blank. I remember that Mr. Kermit has a flip phone that's probably as old as his car. There are smartphones and dumb phones. His is a rock. I unlock the passenger door. Mr. Kermit, please, let me give you a lift. When he reluctantly gets in and announces his destination, I nearly choke. He's going to pick up his car from Kingston's Auto Works. Are you serious? You took your car 15 miles out of town just to avoid my offer to fix it for free? The response is a heavy dose of the Squidward Grinch face. I don't want to owe you anything. You wouldn't owe me anything, I'm practically whining. I would have been happy to do it. He's sarcastic. Well, so long as you're happy. That's not what I mean, and you know it. I enjoy doing favors for friends. Mr. Kermit doesn't like that, so I adjust my word choice. For people I know. You used to be my teacher. I remember. This is it, my chance to clear the air and apologize. But as soon as a thought pops into my head, I know he won't let me. Better to shut up about it. Maybe, as the two of us spend more time together, I'll get another chance. And maybe the moon will fall out of the sky. When the Porsche reaches Kingston's Auto Works, Mr. Kermit takes out his wallet and tries to pay me for the gas. When I won't accept it, he stuffs a $20 bill into the glove compartment and gets out, not bothering to say thank you. I get out too and receive a generous helping of Squidward Grinch face. I can handle it from here, he assures me. I'm going in with you, I insist. I don't want you to get ripped off. These guys are all crooks. Including you? Mr. Kermit inquires innocently. I run a totally honest shop, but still I feel my cheeks flush. An old clunker like yours, the parts probably have to come from the third world. Who knows what they'll try to charge you for them. It must make an impression, because Mr. Kermit actually allows me to follow him inside. The place is a dump. You could probably catch plague just standing there breathing the air. The mechanic behind the counter instantly recognizes me. Hey, you're Jake Terranova. What are you doing here? My very good friend is picking up his car, I reply pointedly. I want to make sure he gets a fair deal. We barely know each other. Mr. Kermit sets the record straight. The mechanic picks up a clipboard. Which car? The Cocoa Nerd, the teacher tells him. The what? Mr. Kermit flushes. It's a Chrysler Concorde, 1992. One of my students calls it that. He's different. I snap my fingers. Parker, right? What's up with that kid? He's got a lot of mechanical ability, but ask him to read the name off a part and it comes out pure gobbledygook. It's not gobbledygook, he says, insulted on Parker's behalf. The boy has a perception problem. He sees all the letters, but his mind rearranges them. Concord to Cocoa Nerd. Like an anagram, the mechanic butts in. You should meet my boss. He's an anagram maniac. You look at a word, and to you it's just a jumble, but he can pick it out in a heartbeat. Poor Parker. The kid's got real potential, but how's he ever going to pass an engineering exam if he can't read the questions? All right, where's the car? Car's not ready, the mechanic tells us. There's a part coming from the Bahamas, and it's held up in customs. Instead of getting mad, Mr. Kermit acts like he's in a completely different world. Anagrams, he repeats slowly. He grabs my arm. Let's go. You have to stick up for yourself, I say sternly. I turn to the mechanic. Is this what you call service? If I ran my shop this way, I'd be out of business in a week. How's the part coming from the Bahamas? By manatee? It doesn't matter, Mr. Kermit insists. Take me to the bookstore. The bookstore? You don't need books, you need wheels. Back in the Porsche, he explains that what all this is about. Parker's mind turns text into anagrams. Yeah, so? So anagrams are something you can get good at, like any other puzzle. I stare at him. Solving anagrams can teach you to read? Mr. Kermit shakes his head. Of course not. Parker needs a reading specialist. If I was half a teacher, I would have gotten him 1 week ago. I'm confused. So where do the anagrams fit in? The kid's reading has been a disaster for so long that he looks at it like it's magic, something he'll never be able to master. But solving anagrams will show him it can be done. So when I get him the help he needs, he'll believe it can work. Can you get him the help he needs, I ask? The district has reading specialists, he explains. Nobody sends them to SCS 8 because they consider my students a lost cause. That ends now. He glares at me. The bookstore. I step on the gas and the Porsche surges forward. It's amazing how Mr. Kermit's whole face changes when he's talking about the kids in his class. He becomes a totally different person. Younger, more alive. He's the teacher I remember from all those years ago. At the bookstore, he's a whirlwind, stacking up an armload of anagram puzzle books tall enough for him to hold in place with his chin. By this time, school is out, so he demands to be taken to Parker's house. Can't you just wait to see him tomorrow morning? I want to strike while the iron is hot. The Elias family lives just outside the Greenwich city limits on a small farm that was designed to keep sports cars out. The long driveway is really just a pair of ruts worn into the unpaved ground by vehicles much higher and wider than the Porsche. I can actually feel the weeds brushing the low undercarriage as we jounce along. Eventually, we come to a low wood frame home next to a shed amid fields of tall corn. No sign of life from the house. I cut the engine. Should I honk? Let's give it a while, Mr. Kermit decides. After about 15 minutes, Parker comes roaring up the drive, his famous grandmother in the passenger seat of the pickup. I know a moment of agony as the kid pulls far too close behind the parked convertible. Parker is pretty bewildered to see his teacher rushing across the front lawn, toting a pile of books he can barely see over. The grandmother spies me standing by my car. I know you, she calls. You're Jumping Jake Terranova. That's right, ma'am. Pleased to meet you. She beams. I saw you on television. You'll jump through hoops to provide fast relief from painful athlete's foot fungus. That's not me, I tell her. I get you a great deal on a newer used vehicle. She looks at me like I'm feeble-minded. Why would I need that? I got my grandson to drive me around. Mr. Kermit is having an animated conversation with Parker, holding up anagram books and talking a blue streak. They're well into it when a small tractor chugs out of the field and an older, taller version of Parker hops off and joins the group. Parker's dad is surprised that a teacher would make house calls, but as Mr. Kermit explains his plan, the man looks impressed and smiles with appreciation. The contrast isn't lost on me. Mr. Elias's gratitude for a teacher who is willing to move heaven and earth to help a student versus my folks all those years ago. They rescued their son, and I'm thankful, but in the process, they hung the teacher out to dry. Mr. Kermit deserved better. I hope someday I'll get the chance to make it up to him. That's it for today, friends. I will be back with more tomorrow. Bye.